Do data removal services work? Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. The short answer, of course, is yes and no, but mostly no. Here's the question. What about the so-called data removal services being touted all over the internet and in many YouTube videos? If internet users lose all control of their post contents, for example, how can these services find your specific posts and remove them? I'm very skeptical. Do these services really work? Once again, there is no black and white yes or no answer. These services can remove some of your information from the internet, but it's impossible to remove everything, no matter what their marketing materials imply. Now, Troy Hunt of Have I Been Pwned fame recently published an essay, Swimming Pools, Pee, and Trying to Delete Your Data from the Internet. I want to share some of those insights. It's an attention-grabbing, if somewhat icky metaphor. Putting information anywhere on the internet is kind of like peeing in a swimming pool. You know it's in there, but removing it just isn't realistic. The complication, which the metaphor, of course, doesn't really address, is that some of your information can be removed from certain corners of the internet. The question is that enough? The answer, much like pee in the pool, is probably not. Certainly not enough to be comfortable. Data removal services tend to underemphasize that, and they focus on the things that they claim they can remove. Here's how it works. The premise is actually pretty simple. A variety of data brokers have your data. This is very true. There are many, ranging from legitimate companies like the credit reporting services to the less than legitimate companies that will take and sell data to and from anyone. Data removal companies then have a long list of data brokers that they simply reach out to and ask to remove your data. This is where things break down in two different ways. To begin with, it relies on the cooperation of the data brokers. Some might remove your data, but many just ignore the request. And of course, the list of data brokers is, by definition, incomplete. Now, while number one is annoying, number two is really more concerning. Data removal services asked all the legitimate data brokers to remove your data, but they have no way to ask all the various shady information brokers to do so. There are just too many, and they're constantly changing. In many cases, the data is out there for the taking, without a record of who even has a copy. There's really no undoing a breach. Legitimate data brokers get their data in legitimate ways. These are the services that are most likely to respond to requests to remove your data. Hackers? Not so much. If your data is exposed in a breach, then most of the time there's just no way to contact the parties responsible. Even if you can, they're very likely to ignore requests to remove your data from what they've stolen. Even then, your data has already likely been copied to multiple different places, many of which are outside anyone's direct knowledge or control. To quote Hunt discussing his wife's data being part of the Shiny Hunters leak, quote, "Because we're talking about digitized data posted publicly, it replicates like crazy. There will be tens of thousands of copies of my wife's personal info floating around between personal stashes, Telegram channels, and public hacking forums. That genie is never going back in the bottle." End quote. So, are these data removal services lying? Well, for the most part, no. I'm sure that some do, but the majority are legitimate. If you read what they promise carefully, you'll see that they don't promise everything that their marketing might imply. Quoting Hunt again, "So what we're left with is data removal services being effective for legally operating brokers who honor legitimate requests while being completely useless against the worst kinds of sites that replicate and abuse your data. In other words, you may be able to opt out of some marketing material or content that's way too specifically targeted to you, but you can't stop the bad guys trying to steal your identity or extort you. Honest people will be honest and play by the rules, but bad actors will always be out of your grasp or the grasp of data removal services, no matter what they promise or imply. These paid removal services, I guess they're not really a scam, but they can't really do what people want or think they're paying for. They can't undo a data breach. My take is that data removal services are ineffective at removing the data we really want removed and thus not worth it. If you feel that removing your data from legitimate data brokers is worth it, then it might be. It's not something I would personally prioritize. The real takeaway here is that you have to assume your data is in the wild and act accordingly. What does that mean? Well, more than anything else, it means being skeptical. Your data can be used to create amazingly realistic phishing attempts. And of course, watch your bank and credit card statements. Ideally, get notifications on all transactions, but if you can't, check regularly for transactions you don't recognize. Yeah, it's very unfortunate and frustrating that this is the situation we're in, but we are. All we can do is be aware and take control of what we can. For comments, for updates, for links related to this topic and more, visit askleo.com/194334. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.